Hello friends, welcome to the Gut Connection seminars. This is a 5-part series and we'll be talking about the gut. We're going to be taking you on a journey. You might actually discover many new things. I know what you're thinking. Gut is a very serious thing, you know, and this has to be a very serious occasion. But I actually found that if I make it very, very serious, you all start having faces like if you are constipated, you know, like, you know. So I need to make sure that you are nice and relaxed and you're enjoying the information in an easy way, easily delivered way. So I might use stories, I might use my clinical experience in some cases just to enhance your understanding. Having said that, I need to, so that's us, by the way. newfootsteps.com.au. We work in Australia and we work with every intestinal disorder as well as many other things. And definitely we do, as clinical nutritionists, we work with the gut quite a bit. The gut becomes a very central piece of our target in our diagnosis and in our protocols for people's recovery, okay? But we're going to start with the gut connection part 1. Oh my God. And I need to actually share with you a disclaimer because though I will be sharing with you lots of information, I do not want you to actually perceive this information as a personal prescription to you. In fact, to a degree, these presentations will probably bring more questions than answers. They will bring a lot of answers, but you know, knowledge is so great that those answers will just instigate more questions in your mind. And I want to make sure that the people are doing the right thing and they're using something that nowadays is very uncommon. It is common sense. And if you are unsure, if you are on medications, if you are self-medicating yourself and so on, please do not use this as a reference. I actually know a lot of people that they watch health programs and they will just eat or drink according to what that presenter in the health program has said, despite the fact that you can only say so much in an hour's presentation, okay? And make sure that you think for yourself, okay, that you're not someone else's puppet, and definitely I don't want you to be my puppet, that's for sure. I mean, there's nothing worse than a Spaniard, you know, trying to direct the world. Oh, what a mess, you know. Just look at Spain, how the economic is over there. That says it all. So, the disclaimer is this. The New Footsteps lecture series are designed to share valuable information with the general public. They are not to be used as a treatment for individual cases. For online appointments, visit our website. Now, there's so many intricacies, so many things so many variables that it will be impossible to actually cover those variables in a 10-hour lecture, in a 20-hour lecture. There's so many variables that are personalized to you that cannot be taken into account in lectures like this, okay? So, the digestive system, we have the gastrointestinal or GI tract and the accessory digestive organs. So we actually have a very long tube starting from the mouth and finishing at the other end that it has a particular length and it's quite long. And also we have accessory organs that are part of the digestive systems. For instance, we have the liver, we have the pancreas, we have the gallbladder. We actually have other additionals that help us with digestion and so on. So I want you to think about your gut. And I want you to put your hand where your gut is. Where is your gut? Okay. So you just put your hand on over 5 meters of tube. So which part is your gut? What part of those 5, or sorry, not 5 meters, you know, maybe 7 meters. Because we all adults here, 7 meters. You just put your hand on 7 meters of a long tube. So which one is your gut? Which one of those 7 meters? All of it. Well, the GI tract is between 5 to 7 meters if you are a living adult. Do you know why I'm specifying if you are a living adult? because if you are a dead adult, it's actually longer. So, you know, from 5 to 7, but it can actually be from 7 to 9. And it all has to do with the muscle tone. The muscle tone around your core muscle, the less muscle tone, the longer your tract, your GI tract. So I've got a lot of people saying, well, the reason why I've got this problem is because I do have a much longer GI tract. And I normally say to them, maybe you did. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, because dead people, they actually have a much longer one because lack of muscle tone. Now, how much muscle tone do you think you get every day by sitting in front of the computer, sitting in front of the steering wheel, and sitting in front of the TV? How much core muscle tone you actually get? Very little, isn't it? Very little. So we already have people with troubles, with big trouble, because it takes too long from here to the other end. And now you're making the distance longer. So we are going to talk about muscle tone also in this series. From the mouth to the anal canal is composed of a layer of epithelial and in direct contact with the contents of the GI tract. They are epithelial cells, different type of cells, but they're all epithelial cells from where? From the mouth to the other end. So where is your gut? It's all the same type of epithelial, from here to there. So where's your gut? From here to there. Now, we don't go around and say, oh, my gut, right? We go here. And that's because normally it doesn't take that long to go through the esophagus down to the stomach, okay? But when we actually having an interview with patients, and if they feel bloated, we ask questions like this. Okay, where do you feel bloated? Do you feel bloated here? Do you feel bloated here? Do you feel bloated here? How long after food do you feel bloated? Do you feel bloated 15 minutes after the food, half an hour after the food, 2 hours after the food? Why? Because it makes a difference. What part of the gut is being inflamed or bloated, and how long has it passed? Okay? So it is all a long tube of the same epithelial cells. That's why sometimes it just gives us a little bit of a clue. It's not diagnostics, but just it gives us a little bit of a clue when that person is putting the tongue out and that tongue is all cracked all over the place and it has very funny color and very funny shape and so on. Why? Because it's just giving us maybe an additional information on the state of the lower gut, because it's all the same epithelial cell. In fact, you will actually get people with heavy fungus contamination in the gut that you will actually be able to see it in the tongue. Okay? A nice thick layer of white fungus attached there. Okay? And then when you have that, you go, and then you start looking at the symptoms and you go, maybe everything is interconnected and interrelated. Okay? So, this is in Australia. If you are 50 years of age in Australia, you actually get about a screening program. So you actually receive it free on the mail. So if you're 50 years of age, I don't know if they have the same here in your country. Yeah, yeah, the same thing. So you receive it in the mail, and basically it's like a piece of paper. It's like nice long piece of paper with a hole in it. That's the way you actually, that's the one that you actually you'll put over your toilet bowl, and you actually remove some waste. You'll sit there, you'll remove some waste, and there's a collection little thing, and you send it to pathology. And that actually is a screening for cancer, colorectal cancer. Why would they like to screen for colorectal cancer? Because colorectal cancer actually kills more people than prostate cancer. And colorectal cancer kills more people than breast cancer. But the majority of the advertising about cancer that we hear out there are about prostate and about breast. Because when you think about colon cancer, what are you thinking? yucky thing. When you think about prostate and when you think about breast, they're actually sensual organs. So I don't know if that will have something to do with that, but the fact that the prostate is connected to a sexual organ and the breast is sensual at least, and it is also connected to some of the hormonal regulations of the female body. However, there's more cases of people dying of colon cancer and getting colon cancer than prostate or breast, and it's significant. So, now, I'm just going to tell you something. Imagine you've been smoking since the age of 14, and now you turn 50. And then because you turn 50, they're going to actually go and they're going to send you a screening kit there, and you open it, and you need to cough in a piece of paper and then seal it and send it to pathology, just to see the risk of lung cancer. What would you think about that screening? Okay, let's go to see how far you are or how likely you are to get lung cancer. So you cough, cough, cough. They get a sample, okay, we're just pretending here, and you send it over to pathology, just to make sure. And the next year you do it again. You cough, 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 but you're still smoking 40 cigarettes a day. Now, what would be a nice strategy for prevention of lung cancer? The testing at 50 or the quit smoking campaign? Quit smoking campaign. True? Okay. So the interesting thing is, I don't know about you here, but in many countries, they actually have this kind of, in Australia, for instance, they have these barbecues. They've got these barbecues in which people come together for fundraising, and you just have a barbecue together for the study and prevention of colon cancer. When you go to those barbecues, the food presented and the drink presented in those barbecues are all in the category of foods that might have an impact on colon cancer. So while we're actually eating and enjoying that food, we're actually donating for the research of colon cancer. Now, if that doesn't make sense to you, could you raise your hand? Okay. Now, this is well and true, and we actually encourage people to do so. But if you are a smoker and you get a kit for lung cancer while you're still smoking, the most logical thing is, okay, I'm going to quit smoking, true, and then because I had a history of smoking in the past, I'm going to still do the test every year just to monitor. Does that sound fair? Good. But here, the only thing is the kit. There's not actually dietary recommendations on the prevention of colon cancer. And there are actually studies on probiotics, studies on dietary approaches that are preventative of, that they have been proven to be preventative. No, I'm not talking about a cure here, I'm talking about a prevention, because this is prevention. And prevention in the sense that if you get a colon, a tumor that is like this, it's much better than something like this, true? Okay, so from that point of view, it is prevention from anything getting deteriorating even further. So the idea will be to have dietary approaches. So imagine this. There is the long cliff, and the people go very close to the edge of the cliff, just on the verge, and every now and then you actually get people that fall from that cliff and they crashed at the bottom. So the health services of that particular country, we're just having a story here, it's not a real country, but I want you to get the information behind it. The people of that country, the health services decide to actually invest millions of dollars in quick response ambulances, paramedics, emergency protocols in hospital, and so on. Millions and millions of dollars, because every so often, you know, and it's getting increasingly more over time, people get too close to the edge because it's a nice view from there, and they get too close and they fall and they crash down. Some of them will die in the instant, but others, they'll still survive. They'll have their legs one way and their arms another way. But they figured out that if they invest a lot of money on a quick response and they get them early, they might actually put them up together and put the bones astride and so on. I will say that that is a very big throw of money to the rubbish. I've got a much easier, cheaper alternative to that. I will put a fence at the top. Does that make sense? I will just put a fence at the top and making sure that I still have some kind of quick response, because you're always going to have the guy that is going to jump that fence also. Okay? So you have a big response, a quick response at the bottom, but you put a fence at the top. True? So I'm using this analogy to make you realize that if you are 50 years of age and you're just thinking that getting cancer is like lottery, you know, like I just did the test, got the lottery, I got colon cancer. Now, in some cases, might be the case, but in many cases, there is a contributing effect that has been building up over the years. I have many people that tell me I had colon cancer, you know, just came out of the blue. And I go, do you suffer from constipation? All my life. Do you suffer from recurrent headaches? All my life. Do you suffer from bloatiness? All my life. Do you suffer from hemorrhoids? All my life. Did they ever actually found any polyps? Oh, yes, they found. Do you suffer from diverticulitis? Oh, yes, I do. And all of a sudden, you got cancer? No, cancer doesn't. No, I'm not saying that we can actually nail down all the reasons, because cancer is a field that is so broad, you know, so broad. There's so many influences, environmental influences, genetic influences. There's so many. It's so broad that it will be very unrespectful and very unprofessional to make very simplistic statements about cancer. But there's always going to be a reason. Now, that reason might not be under our control. We could have been exposed to chemicals. We could have been exposed to this. We could have been exposed to something that produced a genetic mutation. Now, but there's always going to be a reason. There's no lottery. There's always a reason for it. Okay? Even if we don't know the reason, there's always going to be a reason. So there's no lottery. You know, in Spain, we have a very funny way of speaking about malignancies, like cancer, for instance. You know, my mom will call me often from Spain and said, "Do you know Juan, the one that lived on the 3rd floor?" I said, "Yep. He apparently he has something." Oh, what does he have? You know, something. He went to the doctor and he has something. He said, what something? He said, something bad. Something bad. He's sick. Something bad. Because if we say the word cancer, we might catch it. So we can't say the word, because if we say the word, you know, we catch it. You know, that's the way in Spain also they talk about diabetes. You know, they send me the test, and I said, before I check it, they're already going to tell me, my diabetes is high. He said, you know, my sugar, they say it this way, my sugar is trying to catch me. Like if somehow that angry sugar is just upset with you and is chasing you. So the first thing that I said to those people, you better start running. You know, because exercise is good for diabetes, you know, you better start running. So we have to be honest and try to figure out what's going on, and also honest with the symptoms that we've been carrying on through the years, okay? Now, this guy is the father of, it's referred as the father of medicine, you know, and he said the disease starts in the gut. And obviously, this is a statement based on ancient Greece, sorry. And so we know also there is genetical predispositions and things like that, but he was not far off in terms of many of the things that start in the gut that can actually then be manifested in other conditions outside of the gut. So, and he used to say this statement of look at the bowel, just look at the bowel. You know, how, before anything else, the child has fever, look at the bowel. The child has a rash, look at the bowel. The child has eczema here, look at the bowel. Look at the gut, look at what's going on here. What are you feeding the person, okay? Do you think the health of your gut has anything to do with what you eat? Okay, raise your hands. How many of you, in a logical sense, think that what you eat will have a direct impact on the channel, on the canal of the digestive tract? Well, that's 100%. That's very interesting. You know why it's very interesting? Because I have actually run lectures in which I had people in the audience that had suffered from Crohn's disease. And they had suffered so badly from Crohn's disease that they had actually a big piece of the colon removed. And they now carry a little bag for the waste, okay? And when they, remember very clearly, for instance, in one occasion, a mother and a daughter. The mother came to the first seminar, and then in the second seminar, she brought the daughter. And the daughter started crying, and then she wanted to talk to me afterwards. And she said, I struggled with Crohn's for years. Corticosteroids to take me to a remission state, and then it will flare up again and bleeding, and until finally the only option that they provided for us was remove the bowel, okay? Not even once in so many years the doctors ever wondered if maybe something that I was eating was irritating it. Not even once. And when she actually inquired to one of the specialists, do you think that maybe I read something on the internet? Of course, if you open that statement to a professional that has studied 13 years at university, you think he's going to take you seriously? No. So I checked it on the internet already, you know. Well, the internet doesn't know anything. I know everything. And then that professional will go and say, no, that's nonsense. That's rubbish. What you eat has nothing to do. You actually have Crohn's disease that has nothing to do with it. Now think about this very carefully. We already know that almost up to 80% of heart conditions are lifestyle related, diet and exercise, lifestyle related. And those are actually based on the studies. Cardiologists will tell you this. You know, you need to change your diet. You need to stop eating so many saturated fats and things like that, right? So the heart is not touching the food canal. Do you notice that? The heart is not touching the food canal. And it has up to 80% repercussion of what you're eating in the heart. But, the actual organs that are actually touching, the actual cells that are actually touching that food, that will have an impact on your heart outside of the digestive system, all of a sudden do not have a direct effect on the canal. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense at all. You will think that by the time that person has a heart condition based on the effects of what that person is eating, there will be already some digested symptoms. Does that make sense? To me, it's common sense. I mean, I've got a very mathematical mind, and to me, that makes sense. When I heard that not even one specialist ever even wondered things like, are you eating too much of hot curries, too hot curries? Or are you using too many laxatives? Or do you have a history of constipation? Or are you lactose intolerant? Or are you gluten intolerant? Or are you reacting to wheat? Or not one single question about diet. That doesn't sound right. And I'm not saying that diet could actually have reversed it. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that we go very quick to cut in certain occasions, okay? So, we need to actually make sure that, that we introduce food in our cell, for our cells, nutritious foods, okay? And the toxics go out. How many of you know what a compost bin is? A compost bin, you make compost. You make, okay? What do you put in your compost bin? All your scraps from the table and things like that. Make sure you don't put, this is just on the side, don't put onions, don't put lemon and orange peels, okay? Because your compost will not work as effectively. But if you only put good things in and toxins are not going out, you will have a problem. Because if you put things in and nothing goes out, or as it should go out, you end up with a compost bin here. Okay? So there are 4 primary waste removal units. We have the skin, we have the lungs, we have the kidneys, we have the colon. So when we're talking about the skin, for instance, if we start having somehow skin issues, one of the things that we need to contemplate is the possibility that for whatever reason your body is struggling to remove toxins, either through the lungs or through the other venues, and it's using now what? The skin to do so. So some of the skin rashes and things like that, we need to start considering, is it that my gut is not actually working properly and the body is flaring up through the skin because it's pouring out toxins out? Then we have the lungs. Have you ever been around a person that when he's talking to you, you need to do this? That person is in here, he's talking to you, and you go, yeah, that's very, yeah. Yep. And you have to remove yourself from the environment because the environment smells very strong. Smells like poo. And there can be a number of reasons, okay? There can be a number of reasons. For instance, it can be an infection in the mouth, okay? It can be bacteria in the mouth, between the teeth. It can actually be that a person suffers so much from tonsillitis, but then he never got the tonsils removed. But because he suffers so much from tonsillitis, the tonsils become wrinkly and with a scar tissue rather than nice and smooth. So then when the person is actually eating, in between those wrinkles, food settles there, and then that food goes off, and you got it in here. So every time that you're speaking, you know, that awful smell comes out. Okay? It could actually be because now your bacteria in the gut has so much unbalanced that, for instance, you have a lot of carbohydrate scavengers there, and they are actually burping. That bacteria is actually burping. And burping from one end and burping from the other end. I'm talking about the bacteria. So that comes up in the smell. And it could also be the indolent smell, which is actually when your colon is full of compost in the decomposing stage. So not rich soil, but in a nice decomposing stage. And then the body reabsorbs those toxins, and it goes into the lungs, and as you're breathing out, it comes out. So when that smell comes out like poo, and if it comes from indolent fermentation gas there, literally that's where it comes from. It comes from your bowel. So you are, okay? So that's from the lungs. The kidneys, of course. Everybody's drinking water? Yes? Good. So the kidneys, they get rid of a lot of toxins from the liver. They will go into the bile, and for instance, the color that gives the yellow color to the urine and the browny color to the feces is actually bilirubin that comes from the liver. Okay? And so there's a lot of toxins that come out of that. And of course, the colon. So if you have the colon that is not working well, the others are going to suffer in one way or another. So you smell, your breath can actually smell like your colon because your colon is not functioning. Okay? Your skin can actually have lesions or ways in which it's trying to get rid of toxicity out. Now, if you get 2 organic biodynamic apples, 2 apples, same age. You get one and you put it at a nice temperature, this fresh temperature that we have here, you put it in the counter near your, with all the fruits there. So it doesn't have any hits on it or anything like that. So it's nice, perfect apple, you leave it there. And then you get the other apple, perfect as it is, and you put it in your compost bin. Just you place it there in your compost bin, okay? You come back a week later, and if the temperature hasn't been that hot and so on, and you don't have any rotten fruit around that apple after a week can still be eaten, right? Now, when you go to check the one in the compost bin, the color has changed, starting to rot out, there's flies all around it, etc., right? So, guess what? If what you got in your system is a compost bin, rather than actually a balanced system in equilibrium, even the simple apple, the most biodynamic organic apple, rather than actually do good to you, can actually just contribute further to your compost bin. So, colorectal cancer, this is in 2006, New Zealand, look at that. Germany, Australia, United Kingdom, Spain, so on. Look at the United States of America, look where they are. I mean, come on, those people invented the fast food. Why are they down there? Somebody was saying to me, it could be because the #1 cause of death in America is heart attack. So the reason says, maybe they're dying of a heart attack before they get colon cancer. So that's why they're so low in the list. But that's 2006. Now, I want you to notice Spain, France, Italy. What do those countries have in common? Spain, France, Italy. Mediterranean diet. Now, if they are in the Mediterranean diet, can you actually explain to me why are they listed so high on colorectal cancer? They are on the Mediterranean diet, right? So why are they so high? Now, if I actually put the figures of the people with overweight condition in the world, you will actually see normally many of these countries will also be right up in the list. So do we know that overweight, carrying extra weight actually increases the risk of colorectal cancer? Yes. Are the studies proving that? For sure. Is smoking increasing the risk? For sure. A low fiber diet? Sure. A low vegetable and high animal protein diet? Sure. All those studies are there. So just don't rely on the kit. This is actually at 2012. Australia. North America. Where are we now? North America? Yeah. Okay. Western Europe, Northern Europe, Southern Europe, they're all right up there. So if you don't want to have much cases of colorectal cancer, you probably have to go to Eastern Africa or something. Now, you have to be aware that these people eat differently, have a total different lifestyle, they consume different levels of animal protein, they have different consumption of alcohol, and you will actually see that there is not just the fact that they have less cases or less percentage of colorectal cancer, but there's other lifestyle issues around it. Okay? So, we're just going to, in this presentation, we're just going to look at this part of the gut. It is a part of the gut. Okay? And in some cases, it could be called the colon. In some cases, it can be called the bowel. In some other cases, it can be called the compost bin. Depends. In the Renaissance era, the people used to go through the streets, in the 17th century, 18th century in Europe, the Renaissance. They used to go through the streets and they will ask this question: How are your bowels? You know why they will ask that question? It was a way of saying, a very intellectual way of saying, how is your day? Truly, that's it during the Renaissance. So rather than saying, like they say in Australia, how you doing, mate? No, they wouldn't say that. They will go, how are your bowels? And then it was two ways of answering that question. One way was, if you had a very good day, you will say, good. So you're answering that you had a good day. How are your bowels? Good. But if your day was terrible, if your actual day, the things that you did through the day were terrible and everything was falling apart and you were not having anything done right and so on, when they ask you, how are your bowels, you will say, rotten. Rotten. So that meant that you were having a very terrible day. How are your bowels? Good? Don't answer, don't answer. Okay, so this is actually a textbook colon, okay, the large intestine. And we have the appendix there, and the word appendix means good for nothing. That's what the word appendix means, you know, it's just there. It's a result of some kind of something that if you take it, it doesn't mean anything. Lately, however, I reckon we need to put a petition to rewrite all the physiology and anatomy books. Because when I went to university, you know, we had to understand every single part, the functionality, how they actually, the physiology, how every part will work and so on. And you have to learn all these names, all these names. It will be much, much easier to call a great variety of them just Appendix 1, Appendix 2, Appendix 3. Why? Because the appendix, you can live without it, Appendix 1. But if you have gallbladder stones, we'll just remove it, Appendix 2. Why learn the word gallbladder? Appendix 2. Okay? So if you have something in your colon, we can remove it, Appendix 3. You can actually live in a very small part of your liver, Appendix 4. You can actually just live with one lung, one of your lungs, Appendix 5. You can live with one kidney, Appendix 6. And it will be much easier for university studies, much easier in the tests. You know, you just need to learn numbers. Which one is the... Now, you realize that things are there for a reason, right? Things are actually there for a reason. Well, there's a lot of reasons for the appendix, you know, among many, as developing fetus and being born into the world, the appendix actually helps the transformation from neutral cells into white cells, certain types of white cells, okay? It also has some kind of anti-fungus or like insecticide type of thing that is good for worms. So when you have worms, they're normally right at that area there. It's called the cecum, right there at the bottom. So that's called the cecum, and normally the worms live there. Some people have people living in the basement, okay? And guess what? They're not even paying rent, and they're there, you're feeding them, okay? They also have a lubricant to help the chyme go up against gravity. So there's a number of functions for that. Then you got the transverse colon, and then you got the descending colon. Then you have the sigmoid, which is that area there. And then you got the rectum, okay? So this is a test book. However, what is normal is not necessarily what is common. So sometimes you hear people making such interesting statements. For instance, if a boy is taken to the doctor and that boy hasn't gone to the toilet for 3 days, the doctor will say, well, everybody's different, that's actually normal. Why? Because he's been exposed to the same kind of scenario by many, many mothers and children. Now, let me tell you, the fact that it's common doesn't make it normal. That a boy hasn't gone for 3 days, it doesn't make it normal. In fact, we know that, that boys in particular tend to suffer a lot from constipation. Now, that's a prolapse colon here. That is also common. And if you're a lady, all of a sudden you have a prolapse there, and you have your uterus and grabs your uterus, and you have now a prolapsed uterus too. So they need to lift that colon up, staple it, get the uterus up, staple it, okay, and bring it up here. Core muscle holds your colon. Lack of core muscle makes everything look south. Okay, so that's actually common, but that's not normal. That's very common when you actually have a very little area there that the feces have to go through. Can you see that? Okay, that area there. Now, around this area, now we see the spasm being pointed out. Around that area, there's actually nerves that are also connected to the ovaries in ladies and to the testes to men. And it is interesting that when an X-ray shows that area there and you ask the lady if she suffers from very heavy periods, that can actually be one of the reasons, because the period comes at the end of the month, and the lady actually decides to go to the toilet more, this bigger stimulation. So she's overstimulating that area that is not that used to be overstimulated, and there's a bigger pain on the ovaries, just because the colon is there. So then you have a balloon there, you have two different narrowings there, as you see on your right. You got diverticular, which are little pockets. Colitis, which is a very big inflammation. And then, of course, you got ulcerative colitis when that inflammation also is causing bleeding. Okay? So, the enteric nervous system, the GI tract is regulated by intrinsic and extrinsic set of nerves. The enteric nervous system has 100 million neurons that extended from the esophagus to the anus. So if you cannot move your arms because you had an accident and you cannot move your arms anymore, you cannot move your legs, you cannot even speak because of that accident, you can still digest food and you can still evacuate that food. Why? Because of the enteric nervous system. It's a group of nerves that are not actually controlled to a degree by the brain, but sort of controlled by themselves in a way, okay? So you can actually have full functioning of your liver, full functioning of your intestines and so on, despite the fact that you have to be on a wheelchair for the rest of your life. And interesting enough, when you see a very delicious food there, what happens to your mouth? Start watering. You just saw the food and your mouth starts watering. When the mouth starts watering, there is something called the peristaltic movement in your bowel, and your bowel starts having movement. Why? Because it's preparing a space for the meal that you are about to eat. Now you tell me how that plate had influence in the movement of your bowel just by your eyes looking at it. Okay? So what we actually know is that there are sections of your colon that are actually interconnected to different areas all through the body. So if you actually cut a piece of your colon, you are actually leaving blind nerves there, blind nerve endings. Okay? That kind of before used to go somewhere and now they're not going. But alternatively to that, if you have a colon that is all reshaped, not in the natural way, but all reshaped, all of a sudden you don't know in which way that is going to influence other parts of your body. Now, a heart attack is when there is deprivation of oxygen through the stopping of the blood flow in through the arteries of the heart. Okay? And we know, for instance, that a build-up plaque around it can cause it, or just a little thing that is blocking a small artery. Okay, and the body tries to find a bypass. Sometimes a bypass is generated in the hospital, but sometimes little minor arteries, the blood can actually find its way through. But occasionally, very occasionally, you actually find that they bring this person into the hospital. That person is having a heart attack. They bring him into the hospital. They move him around from the car, from the ambulance to the emergency room, and this guy has been moved up and down, and all of a sudden, this guy passes a tremendous amount of wind. So it's just, like a cornet or like a trumpet, in a nice symphony, everything is coming out. So everybody steps back a little bit. And then when the guy has finished with his musical piece, they go back and the heart attack has stopped. Now, I'm not saying that that's the cause of a heart attack, but occasionally has happened when the heart attack has stopped. Why? Because that guy was full of it, so full of wind that was actually putting pressure in some of the arteries. And when he passed the wind, the pressure was released, and the heart attack stopped. I mean, look at that, just from the bowel, just that part of the gut, okay? So there are nerves in every single direction, connected to the stomach, connected to the liver, connected to the gallbladder. If you have a gallbladder issue, do you have a gut issue? Most probably. If you have a liver issue, do you have a bowel issue? Most probably. If you have a heavy period issue, would you have some kind of issue also with your gut? Most probably, because they're all interconnected. Now let me talk to you about the second. When the second looks nice and round, it's probably okay, but when it looks a little bit pointy, you have people living in the basement. You have worms there. Okay, when it looks a little bit pointy, that cecum is that area there in the colon near the ileocecal valve there. So connections everywhere, to your ears, to your eyes, to your thymus, to the uterus, to the pancreas. It's connected everywhere. So what happens when a person has an operation and the entire bowel is going to be removed? They are going to have other significant issues, okay? Now, and just to make sure that we're not talking just about drawings, there's an X-ray and some scans too. Look at that one. Look there. How fine is that area? Do you think that person is going to have a problem trying to pass out the waste through that narrow way? Now, if anybody has heard about go through the narrow way, that's not what that statement is referring to. Look at that one. It looks like one of those Formula One tracks there. And that one goes up and down and up and down and up and down. So is that one? That's a colon cancer there in that area where the arrow is. Look at that one too. Inflammation in one area, very narrowing in another area. Lots of pockets on that one. Lots of pockets. We'll talk about pockets in this series too. So, what we need to understand is that we just started to introduce our gut, that the gut starts from here to the other end, and there will be significant effect in other parts of the body and your overall health in your gut. Why? Because we know already that 80% of what you eat is affecting your heart. 80% of what you eat is affecting many of your conditions. So we'll call to reason that it will affect primarily first the areas that food is actually touching. Okay? And we know also that you don't want to have a very long digested tract, because that will mean that you are close to dying. So we will work on the core muscle area sometime soon in the future lectures. Thank you very much for your attention.